The president's evolution on the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. In the space of a week, he said he wants the story to die while breathing new life into it. He's told supporters and the people around him to stop talking about it, and though some largely did, he did not. Then, with calls for reversing the lid that Attorney General Bondi recently tried to put on the case, coming from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle as well as the MAGA ecosystem, the president tried to reframe the story completely as a hoax that the FBI should investigate as such, despite the very real crimes with very real victims that really were committed by Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell.
What are the things that are most important that you would like to see the FBI get to the bottom of?
I think they could look at all of it. It's all the same scam. They could look at this Jeffrey Epstein hoax also, because that's the same stuff. That's all put out by Democrats.
Yeah.
And, some of the naive Republicans fall right into line like they always do.
He called those Republicans stupid and foolish, said they were weaklings, and disavowed their support. In addition, in labeling the story a hoax, he may have put himself at odds with some of his staunchest supporters for whom the existence of undisclosed Epstein revelations are a token of faith, one that's been pushed by the people who are now running the FBI. Meanwhile, for others on the right and the left, this week's saga has widened a credibility gap the administration faces on the subject of Jeffrey Epstein, a gap the White House did not close with answers to straightforward questions like this.
Can you clarify which part of the Epstein hoax is the hoax part?
The president is referring to the fact that Democrats have now seized on this as if they ever wanted transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein, which is an asinine suggestion for any Democrat to make. The Attorney General and the FBI, led by Pam Bondi, Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, these are great patriots, some of the most trusted voices in the Republican Party movement, and so the president has been transparent. He has followed through on his promises to the American people.
Join me now with analysis, CNN contributor and tech journalist Kara Swisher, host of the Pivot and On with Kara Swisher podcast. She's also the author of Burn Book, A Tech Love Story. First of all, Kara, your reaction to this Wall Street Journal story?
Well, I think it's just the beginning, actually. It's the first story. I think there's probably more to come. I think as he doesn't release this stuff, people will start giving it to reporters, things will start getting out, and none of it looks good for Trump, including this story. Even if he denies it, saying we have things in common, Jeffrey, it creates a feeling, and especially online, that it gets amplified and really weaponized in a lot of ways. So it's not going to end here until he releases these files in some substantive way, which he seems resistant to do, and could be possibly for these reasons. It looks bad for him.
And then there's the Elon Musk of this all. We played the clip of him talking to Tucker Carlson earlier. In a social media post on X, responding to Megyn Kelly's statement that the Wall Street Journal story is, quote, the dumbest attempted hit piece I've ever read, Elon Musk said, quote, yeah, the letter sounds bogus. What do you make of that, given how much Elon Musk has been posting about the Epstein files in recent days?
I don't know. I'm sure he doesn't know anything. I mean, these people just say things off the top of their heads. That's my experience. I think it's a beginning story, and I think they're trying to create a narrative here, and probably they have other stuff reporting they're doing. This would be my guess as an editor, that there's this relationship. There was a close relationship. That's really the problem for Trump is separating himself from Jeffrey Epstein, especially when his base is not just enamored. It's at the heart of. It's not like a little thing. It's a structural pillar of this movement. Is Jeffrey Epstein and all that he represents. So.
Well, it's also tied to the QAnon movement. I mean, it sort of
correct
is in that same petri dish. And obviously there's crossover with, I mean, it's part and parcel, or I don't know if it's a subheading of the QAnon movement, but they're kind of linked together.
It is. Oh, no, the QAnon part is critical here. I mean, they have trained these people to think these things. Remember Hillary in the Comet Pizza basement and everything else? They have eaten this conspiracy theory for a long time, and Epstein is a critical character in it. And to make fun of them is a problematic thing, and to tell them that they don't know what they're talking about after feeding him this stuff, it is very much linked together. And, you live by QAnon, you die by QAnon in a lot of ways. I mean, I think online, this movement, you just go online and watch the reaction. It is not Democrats, although I think Democrats are taking advantage of a really dicey situation for Donald Trump. But it's mostly the base that is going crazy on all these sites. And if you look at the comments, if you look at some of the leaders, although some of them have pulled back, probably in fear of Trump, it's a real problem for him, especially as it gets amplified and weaponized online. And I think he doesn't have the power to stop that because it's at the heart of this online conspiracy world that is linked together in so many different ways and is incredibly powerful.
It's also interesting to me that President Trump is now calling this a hoax, a Democratic hoax, essentially.
Yeah.
It's something that propagated by Democrats. I mean, the hoax was Dan Bongino and Kash Patel on all these podcasts saying just saying stuff and pushing this and fanning the flames of this, I guess, for views, for for profit. And now they are in a position where they've actually seen this. I mean, Kash Patel, I think it was to Joe Rogan saying, or to Glenn Beck, the FBI director has the black book of Epstein and could release it right away. He's now the FBI director. I guess he's now the guy. The black book, which was published, by the way, a number of times in, I think, New York Magazine, online. I think Gawker did it years and years ago.
Yeah, I think that the problem is this is all linked. These people were all for it until they were against it. It creates a real feeling of unease among the followers. And again, Epstein is at the heart of it. And so the problem for Trump is that they will keep talking about this. And he is, factually speaking, they were friends for a decade or more, right? And they were social friends. And he was on the plane. There's lots of facts here that could be, look, maybe nothing happened. Maybe something happened. Who knows? But if he doesn't release the files, there's no way of removing himself from this controversy. And look, some people could have just gone to that island and left. I know a lot of people who did that. Some people could have just gone to dinner at his house and left. You shouldn't, there are problematic issues here in this thing, and including fraud, like what is made up, what's not made up. This is so perfect for an online disaster for Trump, who has been, up until now, very good at communicating online.
Kara Swisher, thanks so much. All week, to get the best possible read on the many facts, twists, and unanswered questions in this story, we've turned to perhaps the single best source for all of it. She's Miami Herald investigative reporter Julie K. Brown, whose work exposed the true extent of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring, which helped lead to prosecutors reopening the case. She's also the author of Perversion of Justice, the Jeffrey Epstein story. Julie is someone, who knows this in depth, who's covered this, who's responsible for keeping this story in the public consciousness. What do you make of the president calling this now a hoax perpetrated by Democrats?
It doesn't make any sense at all. This case predated, the investigations into this even predated Trump's administration, his first administration. There were investigations by the DOJ for the past, probably off and on, they've looked at it for the past 20 years. So it doesn't really make any sense. Look, the reality of this is that sexual assault doesn't discriminate based on political parties. This should not be a political issue. This is a crime that was perpetrated against a lot of young girls and young women over decades. So these kinds of things, the Justice Department was always looked upon as an agency, I think, that of course you always have political appointments, but for the most part, it was independent of the White House. And so these kinds of things that are happening right now are, I think, should be troubling to all Americans, especially with this particular case, which should not be politicized.
In terms of, there are many people who want more information about this and want information released. To your knowledge, is there information that could be released that wouldn't necessarily, or even kind of theoretically, should there be information that could be released that wouldn't reveal a witness who didn't want their name used or a victim who doesn't want their name out there?
I think there's always something that you can release. You can release information about steps that certain agencies have taken in order to investigate this. When there's so many questions surrounding a case, you have to look at it a little bit differently. For example, the grand jury testimony in the original Epstein case, grand jury testimony in Florida, is kept secret. But the weight was put on the fact that this is a case of intense public interest, and it serves the public interest at times to release some of this information. Now, for the most part during the Biden administration, the criminal case was still under investigation. So therefore, they can always use that, and they often do, to say we can't release anything because it's still under investigation. But now it's clearly over. So you have to wonder why they can't release certain portions of it by redacting the names of perhaps victims or witnesses.
Let me ask you about this video, because you've been critical of the prison security footage that the Justice Department released, which was from the day Epstein died. The DOJ said there was no evidence that he was murdered. Wired, looked into this and pointed out a number of things about this video. You say the footage doesn't tell the whole story.
No, because I went back to the report twice to make sure that I was speaking correctly about this. But all the cameras, except for one in that whole entire unit, was not recording that night and for months before that. In other words, you could see things happening in real time, but they weren't kept. None of the footage was kept except for one. But the one camera was not in Epstein's wing. It was in another area, and it showed another couple of cells, and it looked down upon what they call the common area where the guards are. But that was not the area that Epstein was in. His cell was in another wing, and the report actually contains a diagram that shows you where Epstein's cell was and shows you where the camera was at the end of his hall. And it specifically says that camera was not recording.
So is this the video we're showing? The video we're showing, which was the video that was released of the two green doors, are those not? Is that not Epstein's cell?
No, they're not Epstein's cell. But and the fact that people are talking about a minute is missing, they were doctored. If that in fact happened, then that must show that they were really trying too hard to try to make something like this work, because this view that they show is not of Epstein's cell. Epstein's
what
cell
is it
was
of?
in a totally other wing.
What are we looking at?
We're looking at the common areas sort of between those bars that they show, and they were trying to show, look, here's a figure of Epstein walking. So that showed that at that time, he was walking to his cell, but I couldn't make it out to be Epstein, and I don't think it proves anything, because they're not showing the catwalk. They're not showing the hallway where his cell was. I mean, I covered prisons in Florida, prison deaths, suspicious deaths, for a long time. And anybody can get into another cell. If you leave another inmate's cell unlocked, he could have gone next door. I'm not saying that's what happened, but it is kind of curious why they would put that video out there when it wasn't even of his cell.